Last year's electronic scooter program, which ran from August to December, saw an increase in scooters provided, but a decline in overall ridership. Those are some of the findings of a Chicago Department of Transportation report examining the city's 2020 e-scooter program. While some officials discuss a possible permanent e-scooter program, some members of City Council are raising safety concerns about the swift modes of transport. Joining us now with more are Alex Perez, Advocacy Manager of the nonprofit Active Transportation Alliance, and John Greenfield, co-editor of Streets Blog Chicago and transportation columnist for the Chicago Reader. Welcome back to Chicago Tonight. Alex Perez, let's start with you, please. What were your biggest takeaways from CDOT's report of the 2020 program?
Yeah, thank you for having me. One of the big takeaways that I saw was the trips replacements that the scooters were doing. So 30% of the trips replaced by scooters were pretty much either going to be driving or using ride hail. And it also replaced a lot of walking trips. So for that, you could see that people are interested in using scooters to get around Chicago as an efficient way and cheaper way than driving or taking a ride hail.
John Greenfield, how about you? What were your biggest takeaways?
Well, the remarkable thing about last year's pilot was that even though there were a lot more scooters, there was a 10,000 scooter cap compared to 2,500 in 2019 and a much larger service area. In 2019, it was only 50 square miles, just the west and northwest sides. Last year was basically the entire city except for the loop and the near north side. There were actually fewer rides taken last year. There were 665,000 rides taken in 2019, but only 540,000 rides taken last year. So that's kind of, that's sort of puzzling. Like if this program expanded so much, why were there fewer rides?
And John, to that point, do you think the pandemic was the primary reason for that decrease in rides?
Yeah, that definitely was a factor. I mean, people weren't really using the scooters for work commutes much, I would guess, or at least much less. Fewer people were going to downtown office jobs. A couple other possible factors were that Divvy rolled out their new electric bikes, which was a very successful program. Divvy had four of its busiest months ever last year during the summer and fall. And so that probably stole some of the thunder from e-scooters. That there was another way that you could go fast on a micromobility device. And then there's also just the factor that in 2019 scooters were new, whereas last year they were kind of old hat. So there weren't that many people just taking for joyrides just to see what it was like.
And Alex, the city did make an effort to expand this form of transit to the south and west sides, as John just mentioned, with, it had a greater radius. Data shows that almost a quarter, about 23% of trips were taken within the equity priority area. What does that tell you? Does that prove that the initiative was a success?
It was a good initiative. It's definitely positive to increase the range where the scooters could be placed, and especially bringing it down to the south and west sides, where transit options aren't as good, and as well as kind of with the priority. Another thing that could be done is pretty much the street conditions. When it comes to the expansion, a lot of the streets in the south and west sides aren't really the safest streets for people to be riding a scooter on. There's a lot of high speeds, a lot of big trucks that are in the area, and there's really not much of bike lanes or protected bike lanes that could keep people safe riding on the street or on the streets as they're going to a sidewalk.
John Greenfield, the city said that the e-scooter related complaints to 311 decreased in 2019. Do you think that the public sort of acclimated to the scooters? Because obviously last year there was that requirement that meant that scooters had to be locked to something. Is that the contributing factor here?
No, there was a very concrete reason why the complaints went down. And that's actually something that Streets Blog Chicago advocated for, is in 2019, there were plenty of issues with vandalism of scooters. There was even a feed called, I think, Chicago Scooter Fails. There was just funny pictures of scooters hanging from trees and in fountains and stuff. And also just scooters being parked improperly, blocking sidewalks. So those were things that really annoyed people. So we advocated for having a lock-to rule, which means that the scooters have to have a built-in lock and a requirement that when you park the scooter, you have to lock it to a fixed object like a parking meter or a sign pole or a bike rack. And so the city of Chicago took our advice on that. I mean, we probably weren't the only reason they did that, But they did pass that rule. And because of that, I think, problems with sidewalk clutter and vandalism were much less last year.
Alex, some aldermen recently, though, expressed opposition to a proposed permanent scooter program, citing safety concerns as well as a desire to have maybe the scooters docked together with the divvy bikes. What is your assessment of this opposition to a permanent program?
Ultimately, when it comes to bringing in a permanent program, it should really be about making sure that the safety is pretty much being the number one issue when it comes to bringing in more scooters, especially when it comes to crashes or potential crashes. So I feel like the aldermen, especially the aldermen that don't want scooters in their wards, it impacts the full city if the program gets shut down, when it has been proven that some wards pretty much would benefit from scooters coming into the full city.
John, your thoughts? What's your assessment of this opposition and what the aldermen are saying?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying earlier that I think it's pretty analogous to the reaction to divvy stations. In some neighborhoods, people have viewed divvy stations as a bit of a nuisance, like something that creates loitering, or, we've had problems with divvy thefts, so people are worried that, like, divvy stations are going to be a crime generator. But then other people in those communities have pointed out that divvy is a resource. It's something that helps people get to work, get physical activity, get to school. So, if we don't provide divvy stations in all neighborhoods, people are really missing out. So the same thing goes with scooters. There's potential for people to misuse them, but there's also a lot of potential for scooters to, help get people where they need to go and help fill holes in the transportation network and the transit network and improve transit equity.
So more to come.
Therefore, I don't think we should cave to aldermen who don't want scooters in their wards.
All right, that's where we'll have to leave it. My thanks to Alex Perez and John Greenfield for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.